Hello and welcome, I'm James Azimoha. You're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. Donald Trump and Xi Jinping conclude high-stakes summit in Beijing after 2 days of talks. Israel-Lebanon talks continue in Washington as ceasefire deadline nears. And Azerbaijan's president arrives in Kazakhstan for Turkic State Summit on digital cooperation. Now, Trump has left Beijing after 2 days of high-level talks with Xi Jinping, with both sides describing the summit as positive. But beneath the warm language, key questions remain over trade, Iran, Taiwan, and how far China is prepared to go in turning broad understandings into concrete commitments.
US President Donald Trump has concluded his final round of talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping and departed Beijing after a 2-day summit focused on trade, security, and global conflicts. The meetings took place at Zhongnanhai, the Chinese leadership compound beside the Forbidden City, where the two leaders held formal talks and toured the gardens together. Chinese state media described the visit as historic, while Trump called the talks very successful and unforgettable.
So far, we have established a new relationship between our two countries, a constructive and strategic relationship. This can be said to be a milestone visit, and we have reached many understanding on cooperative outcomes.
Trade was one of the main subjects of discussion. Trump said China had agreed to buy 200 Boeing aircraft, as well as more American agricultural products and oil. But China's foreign ministry stopped short of publicly confirming those specific deals during a briefing on Friday. The talks also covered Iran, Ukraine, rare earth exports, military communication and cooperation on law enforcement and tourism. Trump said Xi had assured him that China would not provide military equipment to Iran, and both leaders agreed that Iran should not obtain nuclear weapons.
We did discuss Iran. We feel very similar to Iran. We want that to end. We don't want them to have a nuclear weapon. We want the straits open. We're closing it now. I mean, they closed it, and we closed it on top of them. But we want the straits open, and we want them to get it ended because it's a crazy thing. They're a little bit crazy. When it's no good, can't have it. They cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Taiwan remained one of the most sensitive issues during the summit. Xi warned that mishandling the matter could lead to conflict, while US officials later said American policy towards Taiwan had not changed. Despite warm public language from both governments, many details remain unresolved, including the scale of future Chinese energy purchases, the final terms of any Boeing agreement, and whether Beijing will play a direct role in talks with Iran.
Now, Putin is expected in China next week, just days after Trump's high-profile visits to Beijing. A News' correspondent Manu Makdam looks at the timing and what it could signal.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is expected to visit China next week, only days after the summit between Chinese President Xi Jinping and US President Donald Trump in Beijing. The Hong Kong-based South China Morning Post reported that Putin's visit is likely to take place on May 20th, citing sources familiar with the matter. The visit is expected to focus on strengthening China-Russia strategic coordination at a time of shifting global alliances, ongoing tensions with the West, and continued economic and security cooperation between Beijing and Moscow. Analysts said that the timing of the trip, immediately following Trump's visit, reflect China's efforts to maintain close ties with both major powers, while reinforcing its position as a central diplomatic player. Xi and Putin have met frequently in recent years, holding more than 40 meetings since Xi took office in 2013. The two leaders have continued regular in-person summits and phone calls throughout the Russia-Ukraine war and amid growing rivalry with the United States. The Kremlin has not officially announced the exact date of the visit, but spokesman Dmitry Peskov confirmed this week that Putin would visit China very soon, adding that preparations for the visit have already been completed. Manu Makhtoom, A-News, Beijing.
Now, South Korea and Japan are preparing for another leaders' summit as both sides continue efforts to maintain regular high-level dialogue. President Lee Jae-myung and Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi are set to meet in Andong from May 19th to 20th. Seoul's presidential office says the summit will be their second this year. The meeting follows Lee's visit to Takaichi's hometown of Nara in January under the two countries' ongoing shuttle diplomacy format. Now, diplomatic efforts are continuing in Washington to ease the Israel-Lebanon conflict, with talks described by the U.S. State Department as productive and positive. But with a fragile ceasefire due to expire on Sunday, both sides remain far apart. Lebanon wants Israel to implement the truce, while Israel says the focus is disarming Hezbollah.
Diplomatic efforts are underway in Washington to ease the Israel-Lebanon conflict as cross-border fighting continues and both sides set out competing demands for a possible security arrangement. A U.S. State Department official described the latest Israel-Lebanon talks in Washington as productive and positive, with discussions set to continue on Friday. Lebanon says it wants a ceasefire that Israel implements, while an Israeli government spokesperson said the talks are aimed at disarming Hezbollah and reaching a peace agreement. The talks come as a fragile ceasefire is due to expire on Sunday, with Israel and Hezbollah continuing to trade attacks in southern Lebanon. Lebanon's health ministry says Israeli attacks have killed nearly 2,900 people, including almost 600 women, children, and medics. Around 1.2 million people have been displaced in Lebanon, while Israel says 17 of its soldiers have been killed in southern Lebanon, along with 2 civilians in northern Israel. The Washington meetings mark the highest level contact between Lebanon and Israel in decades, with both sides broadening their delegations for this round. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has framed Israel's actions in Lebanon, Gaza, and Syria as part of a wider regional security approach.
The determination to strike those who seek our lives deep within their territory, far from our borders, the buffer zones we have created around us, in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Syria, all these have changed the face of the Middle East. We will continue to fight forcefully against every threat of radical Islam. At the same time, we will expand cooperation with moderate actors in our region who have understood the advantages of extending a hand to Israel.
Israel says its troops remain in a self-declared security zone in South Lebanon to shield northern Israel from Hezbollah attacks.
Now, Finland said on Friday that suspected drone activity in the skies above the capital region no longer posed a threat and that the situation was returning to normal. The country's defense forces had earlier scrambled fighter jets and deployed emergency services in response to the incident, which also led to the temporary closure of Helsinki Airport. The airport has since reopened. Finland and the nearby Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania have experienced a series of recent incidents as the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. Now, search and rescue operations have ended in Kiev after a Russian strike destroyed part of a residential building, killing at least 24 people. Ukraine says the attack was part of one of the largest aerial assaults of the war, as both sides report fresh drone strikes, and the UN condemns an attack on humanitarian convoy.
Search and rescue operations have concluded in Kiev after a Russian strike caused part of a residential building to collapse, killing at least 24 people, including 3 children, and injured dozens. Ukraine says Russia launched more than 1,500 drones alongside dozens of missiles in what officials described as one of the war's largest aerial assaults. President Volodymyr Zelensky said preliminary investigations showed a recently manufactured Russian Kh-101 missile struck the Kyiv apartment block.
We are investigating in detail exactly which weapons, missiles and drones the Russians used this time. According to preliminary data, a Kh-101 missile struck a building in Kyiv. It was manufactured in the second quarter of this year, which means that Russia is continuing to import the components for missile production, the necessary resources and equipment in circumvention of global sanctions. This must be a real priority for all our partners, to stop Russia's schemes to circumvent sanctions.
Zelensky also visited the site of the strike, where officials say emergency teams are transitioning to recovery and reconstruction efforts. Rescuers removed more than 3,000 cubic meters of debris during the operation, while psychological assistance was provided to 398 people. Meanwhile, the United Nations says one of its humanitarian convoys came under drone attack while delivering aid in the southern city of Kherson.
As usual, we plan carefully our missions. We are very concerned about security given the constant conflict. We have notified the military, both the Ukrainian and the Russian side. But unfortunately, immediately after passing the bridge, entering Austria, a drone hit one of our cars. Luckily, nobody was hurt. We could go to the place where we were supposed to go, deliver the assistance, and then while we were doing that, a second drone attack, again, one of our cars.
The aid convoy later completed its mission before being evacuated by local authorities. No injuries among UN staff were reported. In Russia, at least 3 people have been killed in the city of Ryazan after authorities reported a Ukrainian drone attack. The strike damaged apartment buildings and hit an industrial facility. Ukrainian drones have increasingly targeted Russian oil and gas infrastructure in recent weeks as part of a broader campaign to disrupt Moscow's energy revenues, a major source of funding for the Kremlin's war effort.
Now, Iran's parliamentary speaker has warned that the U.S. military blockade of Iran's southern ports could trigger a new global financial crisis as the Tehran-Washington Strait of Hormuz standoff persists. A correspondent from Tehran brings us more.
Iran's parliamentary speaker has warned that the United States' efforts at sustaining military escalation near the Strait of Hormuz could trigger a fresh global financial crisis. Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf made the remarks in a post on X on Thursday. The Iranian parliamentary speaker quoted a breaking news on U.S. inflation rate after selling 30-year bonds at 5% yield for the first time since 2007, the year of global financial crisis. He was referring to the U.S. Navy's blockade of the Iranian southern ports and Washington's escalating standoff over Tehran's control of the Strait of Hormuz, connecting the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman. Meantime, the spokesman of the judiciary, Asghar Jahangir, defended the seizure of U.S.-linked tankers, saying it was based on domestic and international law and not equal to what he branded as U.S.'s act of piracy against Iran's ships. He said in a statement on Thursday, according to the 1982 Convention on the Law of the Sea, a coastal state can seize ships of another country for violating domestic and international laws and regulations in its maritime territories or on the high seas. And Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, who is in New Delhi to take part in the BRICS ministerial meeting, reacted to the US President Donald Trump's new threat of war with Iran during his visit to Beijing. Speaking to reporters on the sidelines of the meeting, he said that the US should seek a solution to its dispute with Iran somewhere other than the military arena. Iran's top diplomat said, "I hope they will put aside this rhetoric and move toward logic. They will not achieve anything from adopting this path." Turaj Shiraliru, reporting from downtown Tehran for A News.
Now, more than a century after the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb first captured the world's attention, new treasures from ancient Egypt are once again being brought into the spotlight in Luxor.
Egyptian authorities have unveiled 2 rare restored ancient tombs in Luxor, along with artifacts linked to King Tutankhamun, which have been opened to the public for the first time. At the Luxor Museum, they displayed the original plaster wall that once sealed the entrance to King Tutankhamun's burial chamber. Officials say this is a very rare item because most ancient tombs in Egypt were opened or robbed long ago, so very few original ceiling walls still exist.
Today, thanks to Egyptian restorers, we've uncovered the 2 tombs, which are now open for visitation. They feature very important scenes from the 18th dynasty of the New Kingdom.
On Luxor's west bank lies the Valley of the Kings, where pharaohs and nobles of the New Kingdom were buried in rock-cut tombs. Inside the tombs, the walls show scenes of daily life in ancient Egypt: farming, harvesting crops, baking bread, making pottery, and producing wine, painting a picture of how people lived thousands of years ago.
This blocking wall is distinguished by being a unique artifact that has never been replicated anywhere else in Egypt or the world, because almost all pharaonic tombs were looted. This tomb is the only one where such a blocking wall exists, SEDA. Therefore, it is a one-of-a-kind artifact, the only one currently on display more than 100 years after the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb. It is the only surviving artifact of Tutankhamun that the world had never seen before.
The wall still has ancient stamps on it, showing it was part of official burial rituals. It comes from the tomb discovered in 1922 by British archaeologist Howard Carter. Looking back through history, these discoveries remain a valuable window into Pharaoh's era in ancient Egypt.
All right, after the break, we'll examine the latest round of Israel-Lebanon talks taking place in the United States as pressure grows to secure progress before a looming ceasefire deadline. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. Now, Israeli and Lebanese officials are holding a fresh round of talks in the United States aimed at renewing efforts to preserve a fragile ceasefire and prevent wider regional instability. Joining us now to discuss this is Lamis Jadid, political analyst, joining us from Lisbon, Portugal. Thank you for joining us, Lamis.
Thank you for having me.
Now, with the ceasefire extension expiring this Sunday, is the primary goal today a permanent peace deal or simply another temporary delay to prevent immediate war?
Yeah, we should not forget that this ceasefire is linked to the ceasefire also between the United States and Iran. And I think both parties, the Lebanese, and of course, it's a very fragile ceasefire, some kind of stalemate. And yes, the Lebanese went to Washington already fragmented. Partly are putting all hopes that the American will be, they will support the Lebanese cause in this, and the other party of this delegation believes that the problem is actually within Lebanon, not with the Israelis. So we are dealing already with a fractured delegation. The Israelis started with very high expectation already, and the Israeli ambassador to Washington already announced that no withdrawal from the southern of Lebanon, and that will be no agreement without unarming of Hezbollah. So we see that both parties are in a very high expectation today, and we hope that this might lead us to something, to extension of the ceasefire, though the Israeli, they continue their aggression in the southern of Lebanon. But most of the observers believe that this might break soon.
Now that brings me to my next point, obviously speaking about high expectations. Now, how can negotiators maintain diplomatic momentum in Washington when heavy airstrikes and drone attacks continue to claim civilian lives despite official April truce?
Actually, all negotiations goes along with military pressure, and this is what both parties are doing right now, just because they want to go for some kind of agreement. I mean, no diplomatic solutions in such very complicated aspects will take place without applying some kind of pressure, and this was foreseen into many delegations between, or many peace talk or ceasefire talk between both parties during last years.
Now, is it realistic for Israel to demand the total disarmament of Hezbollah when the Lebanese army currently lacks the domestic political mandate to enforce it?
I believe it's very hard to talk about any kind of stability in Lebanon while just forgetting a key pillar in the Lebanese political structure as important as Hezbollah. I think the Israeli know so well that there will be no Lebanon without this structure. They know so well that Hezbollah is their main issue in Lebanon. This is why they are waiting for some kind of agreement between the American and the Iranian, hoping that if this agreement will happen, that Iran might drop off Hezbollah, and this will make it so much easier for the Israeli. This is why both negotiations are aligned for the time being. But they know this, and Netanyahu is so good in negotiation. He knows so well that it will be so difficult to formalize any kind of agreement with Lebanon without the approval of this key pillar as Hezbollah. And this is why I think he's going to pressure them through the Lebanese government itself. Otherwise, he might go for the other worst scenario, and this might be an internal Lebanese issue and some kind of a civil war within the country.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking about Iran, can a bilateral deal truly survive if the broader conflict between Washington and Tehran remains unresolved, effectively keeping Lebanon as a proxy battlefield for others?
There's no doubt that the two files are linked strongly, and everybody in the whole region is waiting for an American-Iranian agreement, because this will affect the security of the whole region, either in the GCC country or in the Middle East, mainly between Israel and Lebanon right now. Of course, any future vision for the region will not go without. I think it will go with for a long term and a short term. Always, we go for something that is, we could do something about it, which is a short term, which might be managing the relationship between the two countries, means some kind of managing the conflict. And this means by no peace really, but just some temporary ceasefire. And the other might go for a longer term, and this is here we are looking for some kind of security blocks in the region, and also not a formal peace. And I see it in the future. It might happen between Israel and the UAE and maybe Saudi Arabia and Turkey. So we are speaking about the whole region, not only about Israel and Lebanon.
That was Lamis Jadid, political analyst, joining us from Lisbon, Portugal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Now, after the break, we'll take a look at the key stories shaping the region. Stay with us. Welcome back to WAY News. Now, President Ilham Aliyev has arrived in Kazakhstan for an informal summit of the Organization of Turkic States, with leaders expected to focus on digital development and deeper regional cooperation. The summit is being held in Turkestan at the invitation of Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. The OTS says the meeting will focus on artificial intelligence, digital innovation, emerging technologies, sustainable economic growth, and regional connectivity. President Aliyev was welcomed at Hazret Sultan International Airport by Kazakhstan's State Councillor Yerevan Karin and other officials. Now, staying with the Organization of Turkic States, we spoke to the director of the Youth Research Center about why the meeting matters and how the Middle Corridor is shaping regional cooperation. Take a look.
Yes, organization summit, it's very important platform for cooperation. 5 countries which connected through the Organization of Turkic State. There are Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkey, Azerbaijan countries, and today the leaders of our countries discuss very important questions such as civilization, artificial intelligence, and other important questions. And I think in now time it's very important because we not just discuss political question, but also more practical questions such as investment, transport, economic cooperation. And I know that a lot of investment projects Turkey country create in Kazakhstan, more than 170. And it's also very important. And one of the most important role is investment fund, Turkic investment fund. This fund help to business, to open new areas, to make this financial ecosystem through this cooperation. And in the transport, I think, in the transport area, I think very important role is Middle Corridor.
Now let's cross live to Orhan Mashov for the latest developments. Now, Orhan, what are the key themes emerging from today's discussions so far? Orhan, can you hear me?
Hey, you hear me?
Orhan, can you hear me? Are you there?
I'm clear and loud.
All right, we're having technical issues. We'll move on to our next. We'll move on to our next story. Iraq's new Prime Minister Ali al-Zaidi has been sworn into office with only a partial cabinet after Parliament failed to agree on several key ministerial positions. Lawmakers approved 14 ministers but failed to reach an agreement on key positions, including the Interior and Defense ministries. The parliamentary session saw heated disputes after objections were raised over the nominee for Interior Minister. Basim Mohammed was appointed Oil Minister, while Fuad Hussein retained his post as Foreign Minister. Now, Turkey has welcomed Iraq's new government under Prime Minister Ali al-Zaidi, saying it will continue to support Baghdad's stability and regional integration. The message comes at a sensitive time for both Iraq and the wider region. Here's more of the story.
Turkey is moving quickly to signal support for Iraq's new government. In a statement, the Turkish Foreign Ministry welcomed the new government, led by Prime Minister Ali al-Zaidi, after it received a vote of confidence in Iraq's Council of Representatives and officially assumed office this week. Ankara wished al-Zaidi success in what it called his critical responsibility voicing hope that his government would take strong steps towards ensuring Iraq's stability, prosperity, and regional integration. The ministry stressed that Turkey would continue providing support for Baghdad's efforts in this direction. For Ankara, Iraq is more than just a geographic neighbor. Rather, the country of roughly 48 million people has long been regarded as one of the most important files in Turkish regional policy. The two countries share deep historical and cultural ties, but the relationship also includes a handful of difficult issues, including border security, counterterrorism, water, energy, and trade. For years, Turkey has pushed for stronger cooperation with Baghdad against the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, while Iraq remains central to Turkish plans for regional connectivity. One major focus is the Development Road project, designed to link the Arab Gulf states to Turkey and Europe via Iraq. Water cooperation is another sensitive issue, especially in regard to the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Turkey's welcoming of Iraq's new government, therefore, is both diplomatic and strategic. Ankara is signaling that it wants a stable, functioning government in Baghdad, capable of working with Turkey across a range of critical fields. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Now let's go back to the OTS story as Orhan joins us from Kazakhstan.
Hello, James.
Hello, tell us the latest, Orhan.
Thank you, James. I very much hope that you can hear me clear and loud now, and the technical problem has been resolved. So basically, informal summit of the heads of state of Organization of Turkish States is currently taking place in the city of Turkestan, which is the spiritual capital of the Turkic world, according to the decision taken back in 2021, when this actually OTS became a proper international organization, as we remember. Well, this is an informal meeting, and we have only here the major countries, member countries, including of course Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan itself, which is hosting this event, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and of course the key focus here is digitalization of connectivity projects, and also of course operationalization of the Turkey Investment Fund. Many subjects will be discussed today. We don't have anybody from Hungary. There has been some question hanging in the air. What will happen to the foreign policy priorities of Hungary after the new parliamentary elections, as a result of which a new government has been formed. But for this informal summit, as I understand, their presence was not intended in the first place. We don't have anybody from the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. We have only major members and not observer countries. Focus will be on digitalization of connectivity and also AI-induced and AI-facilitated language models. There's a considerable amount of talk, James, surrounding the subject of AI sovereignty, digital sovereignty, to what extent actually Turkic countries here in the city of Turkestan could lay the foundations for future cooperation in such a way that when the right time comes for them to pursue proper integration, proper economic integration, the underpinnings are there. I think that there has been two layers of cooperation, and those two layers should be understood properly in the context of this informal summit. One of them is trilateral and bilateral formats involving Turkic countries, and also OTS itself. OTS is not really competing with other geopolitical configurations. I mean, the legitimate questions may be asked: to what extent Central Asia 5+1 is commensurate with OTS? To what extent actually Central Asia +1 could be described as OTS minus Tajikistan? But fundamentally, it looks like that most of the geopolitical configurations, which are presently evolving and taking shape within this wider Eurasian landscape, will eventually be under the umbrella of OTS, Organization of Turkish States. There will be, of course, a number of bilateral and trilateral meetings on the margins of this congregation as well. We remember that, James, last formal summit was in Gabala, and their focus was on connectivity and transport-related matters. The next formal summit will take place in Turkey. So this summit is important in its own right, but also, of course, naturally, it should be perceived as a preparation for the next formal summit as well.
Orhan, thank you very much for sharing your time and insights with us. We'll speak to you later in the day.
Thank you, James. Thank you.
As countries seek to strengthen energy security and renewable cooperation, attention is turning to major projects linking the South Caucasus with European markets. At a regional summit in Athens, Georgia outlined its ambitions to become a key energy transit hub, connecting the region to Europe. Here's more.
This week in Athens, Georgia's economy minister Mariam Krivishvili joined more than 270 representatives from Southeastern Europe and the Eastern Mediterranean at the Energy Summit. On the same stage, the Greek Prime Minister, the Israeli President, the Gulf Cooperation Council Secretary General and senior European Commission officials. At the ministers' panel on delivering the 2030 energy transition, Krivishvili set out Georgia's targets: 11,500 megawatts of installed capacity within 10 years, over $1 billion committed to transmission infrastructure, and a shift from energy self-sufficiency toward active electricity export. The centerpiece is the Black Sea submarine cable. The project would connect Georgia to Romania via a 1,195-kilometer underwater high-voltage line running from Anaklia to Constanta, designed to carry Azerbaijani and Georgian renewable energy directly into the EU grid. Brussels has granted it project of mutual interest status, unlocking accelerated permitting and potential co-financing. Total investment stands at around 3.5 billion euros, with grants potentially covering between 30 and 75% of costs. But the project remains in preparation. Georgia allocated 25 million gel in 2025 budget for the cable, yet only 6.5 million had been spent in the first 10 months. Construction has not begun. Georgia also sits inside the Green Energy Corridor, a regional framework spanning Azerbaijan, Georgia, Romania and Hungary, adding multilateral weight to its transit ambitions. The wider picture, however, is complicated. Georgian Dream's foreign agents law, closely modeled on Russian legislation, has been condemned by both NATO and EU officials. The government presenting Georgia as a European energy partner is the same one whose domestic track record has put that very partnership under significant strain. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Now, Russia says it is building what it calls a full-fledged partnership with Afghanistan's Taliban-led government. Reuters reported the remarks made by Sergei Shoigu, the Secretary of Russia's Security Council. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has the details from Kabul.
Sergei Shoigu, Secretary of Russia's Security Council, says Moscow is establishing a full-fledged partnership with the authorities in Afghanistan. According to Reuters, Shoigu said Russia is also encouraging other countries in the region to expand cooperation with Kabul. He said engagement with Afghanistan is important for regional security and development. Reuters reported that Shoigu described Moscow's approach as a pragmatic dialogue with the Taliban. He said that dialogue includes security, trade, culture, and humanitarian support. Shoigu made the remarks during a meeting with security officials from the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Shoigu also said the organization should revive its contact group with Afghanistan. This comes as Russia has moved closer to the Taliban-led government in Kabul. Russia became the first and so far the only country to formally recognize the Islamic Emirate after the Taliban returned to power in August 2021. Moscow says cooperation with Kabul is needed because of security threats from militant groups across Afghanistan, the Middle East, and the wider region. Here in Kabul, Afghan authorities have not yet issued an official public response to Shoigu's latest remarks. However, Afghan officials have also repeatedly called on other countries to expand political and economic engagement with Afghanistan. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Now, a shipment of wheat from Russia to Armenia passed through Azerbaijan on Thursday after departing from Belajari station. The train is carrying 977 tons of grain in 14 wagons and is expected to travel through Georgia before reaching Armenia. The transit, taking place on May 15th, follows the same original route used for other recent deliveries. As Baku prepares to host the World Urban Forum next week, Baku State University is holding an international conference bringing together experts and policymakers with attention now turning to the global conversation on the future of cities. A-News' correspondent Gulcin Kojalieva reports from the venue.
More than half of the world's population now lives in cities, making sustainable and resilient urban development one of the defining global challenges of our time. In Baku State University, together with the State Committee on Urban Planning and Architecture of Azerbaijan, is hosting a major international conference on the role of human capital in shaping the cities of the future.
This is another clear demonstration of the trust placed in Azerbaijan, as well as the country's growing strength and international standing. Ahead of the event, various meetings and conferences are being organized. Within the framework of Baku Urban Planning Week, Baku State University, together with the State Committee for Urban Planning and Architecture of the Republic of Azerbaijan, decided to hold a scientific conference, and that conference is taking place today.
The discussions bring together government officials, international experts, academics, and urban development specialists to examine key priorities in sustainable urban development. These include climate resilience, digital transformation, urban innovation, and the growing use of artificial intelligence in city governance. Held within the framework of Baku Urban Planning Week 2026, the event forms part of Azerbaijan's broader preparations for the 13th session of the World Urban Forum, aimed at strengthening global dialogue on sustainable and inclusive urban development. Gulcin Kojalieva, Zohrab Shirinov, A-News.
All right, after the break, we'll examine the significance of the 13th World Urban Forum opening in Baku, bringing together global leaders, urban planners, and international institutions. Stay with us. Welcome back to A-News. We now shift our focus to a regional story for discussion. The 13th session of the World Urban Forum is taking place in Baku under the theme Housing the World, Safe and Resilient Cities and Communities, organized by UN Habitat together with Azerbaijani government. To discuss this, we're joined in the studio by David Fernandez Puyana, Ambassador and Permanent Observer of the UPeace. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Now, the WUF13 is the first forum of its kind in the region. What does hosting an event like this say about Azerbaijan's growing international profile?
First of all, I would like then to thank very much the government of Azerbaijan for inviting the University for Peace to the country. I have to say that the World Urban Forum is one of the most leading gatherings in the world for discussing the future of the challenges on the urban and housing in the world. I think this is an important moment in the history of the diplomacy of Azerbaijan for hosting for the first time ever this kind of meetings in the Central Asian countries and the Caucasus. This shows the leadership of the government of Azerbaijan and they concerned about the urbanization in the world.
Now, we see a lot of countries host major global forums. What practical benefits do you think Azerbaijan could gain from hosting this event?
The World Urban Forum started in 2002 in Nairobi, in Kenya. Now it's the 13th edition. This means there have been 12 editions in the past. I think it's an important, because we are in the midterm of the new urban agenda. This shows that it's the place, now this gathering, that will bring politicians, will bring also architects, majors, to discuss the future challenges of this agenda, the urban agenda.
Now, we hear more and more about the link between cities and climate pressure. How do you see that relationship evolving?
And I think there is an extremely important connection between urban challenges and climate change. The topic of this conference in Azerbaijan is about housing the world, safe and resilient cities and communities. And one important topic is also here in the region. We have only to look what is going to happen or is happening regarding to the water level falling the water level of the Caspian Sea. We have an impact, a really important impact in the future of communities and cities.
Now, the WUF-13 is expected to produce the Baku call to action. What role do you think that document could play going forward?
And I think should be focusing on the main challenges. One of them is we need then to consider that we have in the world today around 3 billion people with housing problems. Among them, we have 30 million people homeless in the world, and 1.1 billion people living in slums. And I think should be focusing on the future of the cities, smart cities, transportation, and looking to the future, looking to the challenges.
Now, how important could hosting this event be for Baku's wider international and regional positioning?
And I think we are now living in the region in a so-called peace process. This show that the investment in the economic growth and also the cities play this also role in making more prosperous and peaceful societies.
Now, finally, Ambassador, do you see this event as mainly about housing and cities, or something much more broader about global competition and positioning?
And I think in the United Nations we need to look everything in a more large scale, in the so-called 3 pillars of the UN: peace and security, human rights and development. And then we are extremely happy then for the University for Peace to bring our experience also in the urban development on this particular topic.
Now, Ambassador, while I have you, there's a strong focus on recovery and rebuilding. How relevant are these conversations for countries going through post-conflict reconstruction?
We need to make more smart cities, cities in which we welcome all people, regardless of the race, regardless of the sex, regardless of the culture and religion. And I think the role played by the governments and mayors and local actors are extremely important in post-conflict situation. And this is an opportunity that we have today to show to the world from Azerbaijan to show that peace is possible.
Thank you very much, Ambassador David Fernandez, joining us from the permanent observer of the EU Peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cyril. Thank you.
Now that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.